This is an introduction to Chapter 5, Failed Cities, Fast Cities. This is the lecture that gives its name to the entire course. And the reason this is such an important lecture is most of us think of cities as rather static. We land in a city, we're in a city, so this is what the city is. I guess this is what the city always was, and the city will be better. We make these presumptions about every city. But this is a wrong-headed presumption. Cities are very, very dynamic. They come and they go. They grow and they shrink. And this is, in fact, the natural history of virtually every place. We contest against it constantly with our planning culture, and now with government policy in the United States. We try, in fact, think of cities implicitly as static entities that will become better. We, in fact, in the United States are famous for having historic amnesia. We don't remember that some cities were better. I'm speaking to you from Syracuse, the home of Syracuse University. Many students at the university, many people who live in this city, are completely oblivious to what this city once was. This was once the 12th largest city in the United States. It was certainly among the 10 richest cities in the United States. This city was actually one of the cornerstones of the Industrial Revolution as it went into its real expansion in the United States. It was in upstate New York. It was on the Erie Canal. Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, Schenectady. These were all the homes of gigantic companies. We'll talk about 17 cities that are essentially failing. I will argue that have failed, that will never come back. We're going to talk in the next lecture about Detroit, a city that is totally over with from any of the historic measures of urban health. Working class people lived on city streets that were like cathedrals with elm trees, beautifully maintained in houses they owned. Detroit, which we'll talk about in detail in the next lecture, was in fact an essentially American city where the American dream was lived. Now, how is it that as we think of these failing cities, they came to be like this? And people dismiss these cities as just the natural history. They were in the Rust Belt. And academics and experts pile on essentially unexamined explanations. Industry left. The weather was too bad. We offshored manufacturing. Other states got bigger. People moved to the coasts. There are many, many different explanations, but none of them are comprehensive. So what we're going to do in this lecture is basically pull apart what are the forces that make cities grow and what are the forces that make cities shrink. And we're going to examine a very fundamental question that no one else has ever really spoken to. What do we do with cities that were once very big and become very small? We have no theoretical underpinnings to think about cities after their great moments. What is the great moment of each city? We know in some cities the great moment is in the deep past, when the city was vibrant, when the city was growing, when the city had great incomes for everybody who lived in the city, when the school systems worked, when the water and sanitation systems worked, when the public employees were prideful of the city that they maintained. But those are moments in the past for many cities. But out west we watch, in fact, many cities in exactly the condition that great eastern cities once enjoyed. In fact, we're going to examine a very interesting set of observations. What are the politics of these cities that failed? What were the union forces in these cities that failed? What was the weather? What did a difference in transportation technology spell for these cities? Where are these cities headed? Are they going to be places where old people live, or hospitals succeed, or perhaps a university or college is the main employer in the city? And to examine this question, we're going to look at the opposite side of what cities can be. The cities that are fast growing. Why are they all west of the Mississippi in the United States? Why are the fast growing cities all apparently arrayed on the ocean coasts. Why is it that the Midwest appears to be shrinking from an analytic perspective? Are we going to think about the Midwest as, in fact, an urban place where just enough people live to do the farming, to make the localized agricultural markets? What is the future of the Midwestern city? Will it grow or will it shrink? And what we're also looking at here is an understanding of how to do analysis, because there aren't simple solutions to any of these problems. We're going to contrast growth and decay. Growth and decay. We're going to understand what they're telling us, and we're going to pull apart the forces that are making cities grow in one moment and shrink in another moment. Finally, we're actually going to puzzle through what is appropriate public policy. If a city is shrinking, what is the government to do about it? What are the citizens to do about it? Are the citizens to insist that a city that has no economic rationale be subsidized by other citizens in the nation? What is the claim to the city? We'll look at leftist analysis that operates on a very simple statement that says the people who live in the city should, quote, take back the city. We're going to ask a simple question, a straightforward, commonsensical question. Who would want to take back a city that had failed? What kind of theoretical impulse, what kind of therapeutic impulse, what kind of positive impulse is a simple statement, take back the city, mean? So we'll examine all types of thinking, political thinking, economic thinking, certainly planning thinking. There are people who think old cities that are in decay can be revised and revitalized by brilliant new architecture. And again, we'll look at the fallacy of the built environment as what seems to be the seed of how an economy will start. So fundamentally, we'll understand this whole phenomena from an economics perspective. Not the complete perspective, because economics can't explain everything. But the one thing economics will give us a window on is that the decisions that are accumulating every day by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in a city are in fact the dynamic that spells whether or not that city will survive. If there are positive things going on, that more and more people move to a city to make their future, to buy their gasoline, to build a new house, to choose a school for their children, perhaps to find a spouse, these are the things that are forcing a city into expansion. And when the rationale that is fundamentally economic goes away for those things to operate in a positive way, we will watch people leave cities. But we'll also examine who it is who leaves and who it is who stays, who comes to failing cities and who comes to fast-growing cities, and who leaves each of these types of cities. The demographics of these cities is amazingly interesting. It has huge implications for the national economy. It has huge implications for our political contract one to the other across the regions of the nation. And it has huge implications for not just operating practical politics, but for political theory as well.